Picture a battlefield in the ancient world. The air is thick with dust. The ground quakes under the march of thousands of hobnailed boots, and the horizon bristles with spears. In the front rank of a Roman legion, shields overlapped like scales of a great iron beast, forming a wall that has carried Rome from a scrappy republic to a rising superpower. Now imagine that at the critical moment, one man steps back. His shield slips away, a gap yawns in the wall, and suddenly the enemy surges through. The line buckles, the machine falters. In Rome, that single act, abandoning your post, was more than cowardice, it was treason. A soldier who fled was not just risking his own life, he threatened the survival of his brothers in arms and the fate of the entire army. Which raises the question, what did Rome do to those who deserted? The answer is a story of discipline, fear, and punishment so brutal it still echoes across history.
From its earliest days, Rome understood that its power did not lie in numbers, but in unity. In the 5th and 4th centuries BCE, the legions of Rome were not yet professional armies. They were farmers called from their fields, expected to fight in the summer and return home to harvest. Such men were brave, but they were also human. The temptation to run when the odds turned grim was always present. To stop this, Rome cultivated disciplina. This was not just discipline in the modern sense, it was almost a religion of obedience. A Roman soldier was bound to his commander by an oath, the sacramentum. Breaking that oath by abandoning one's position was seen as breaking faith with Rome itself and with the gods who watched over her. From early on, the punishment for desertion was extreme. Ancient writers tell us of generals who ordered deserters clubbed to death by their comrades. Others condemned them to be sold as slaves or had them beaten publicly as a warning. The logic was simple. Better one man's agony than the collapse of the entire army.
As the Roman Republic expanded, its wars grew larger and deadlier. Against the Samnites, against Pyrrhus of Epirus, and finally against Carthage, the legions faced enemies who could break them if discipline cracked. To deal with this, Roman commanders devised a punishment that remains infamous, decimiatio, decimation. In cases of mass cowardice, a unit could be divided into groups of 10. One man in each group was chosen by lot, and the other 9 were ordered to beat him to death with clubs or stones. The survivors were then forced to live on barley instead of wheat, to camp outside the fortifications, and to endure humiliation before the rest of the army. The message was chilling. No one was safe. Cowardice was not just an individual crime, it poisoned the group. By killing 1 in 10, Rome reminded every soldier that his life depended not only on his courage, but on the courage of his comrades. In a world where honor and shame meant everything, decimatio welded the legions together through shared terror. There are accounts of decimation being used even in the late Republic. The historian Plutarch describes Marcus Crassus using it in 71 BCE during the war against Spartacus. His legions had shown weakness, so he revived the old savage ritual. It shocked the soldiers into obedience and reminded Rome that discipline was worth more than mercy.
Punishments for desertion were not abstract rules, they shaped the outcomes of wars. Take the disaster at Cannae in 216 BCE, when Hannibal annihilated a Roman army of nearly 80,000 men. In the aftermath, thousands of survivors, men who had thrown down their shields and fled, were rounded up. The Senate refused to let them return home in disgrace. Instead, they were sent to Sicily, where they were forced to serve without pay, chained to duty, forbidden to re-enter Italy until they had redeemed themselves in blood. Later, under Julius Caesar, desertion remained a constant threat. Caesar's commentaries reveal his obsession with discipline. He rewarded loyalty, but he also made clear that disobedience would be punished without hesitation. In one campaign, when rumors spread of panic, Caesar addressed the men directly, shaming those who had lost courage and threatening severe reprisals if they abandoned their posts again. His genius was to balance fear with loyalty, but always with fear as the foundation. Even emperors could not ignore the problem. In the 3rd century CE, during the crisis of endless wars and invasions, desertion spread like a plague. Soldiers fled not only from battle, but from garrisons, driven by exhaustion and the lure of banditry. Some emperors responded with new laws. Deserters could be executed, their families enslaved, their property confiscated. Rome made it clear, the penalty for leaving the line was not just personal, it was generational.
Over time, the sharp edge of Roman discipline dulled. The early and Middle Republic had been a world of citizen soldiers fighting for their homeland. By the late Empire, many legionaries were mercenaries, drawn from distant provinces, fighting less for Rome's glory than for pay. Their loyalty was weaker, and desertion became harder to control. By the 4th and 5th century CE, as barbarian invasions pressed harder against Rome's borders, desertion sometimes occurred on a massive scale. Entire units would abandon their posts to avoid hopeless battles or to switch sides. Commanders still threatened harsh punishments, but the old terrors of decimatio were rare. Fear no longer bound the army, survival did. When Alaric the Visigoth marched on Rome in 410 CE, many defenders simply melted away. It was not just individuals, but whole cohorts abandoning their duty. The old iron discipline that had once made Rome invincible was gone. The empire itself crumbled in part because the chain of loyalty between soldier, commander, and state had broken.
The punishments for desertion in Rome seem barbaric today. Stonings, executions, the ritual of decimation. Yet the underlying principle still resonates. Modern armies, too, wrestle with the problem of desertion. During World War I, soldiers in several armies were shot for abandoning their posts. Even in modern codes of military law, desertion in wartime can carry the death penalty. The Roman obsession with discipline also left a cultural mark. The word discipline itself carries echoes of that ancient disciplina. Roman military law influenced later European codes, shaping how kings, generals, and nations dealt with cowardice and loyalty. And in popular culture, the shadow of Rome's punishments lingers. Films and novels often depict the brutality of Roman discipline, the lash, the execution, the unbending demand for unity at all costs. These images capture both the fear and the power that kept an empire standing for centuries. So, what happened to Roman soldiers who abandoned their posts? They were crushed under the weight of a system that valued the group above the individual, Rome above the man. Their punishment was not only meant to destroy them, it was meant to remind everyone else of what Rome required: unflinching obedience, even unto death.
Rome's greatness was built on iron, but also on fear. A single soldier abandoning his post could unravel a legion, and so Rome made the cost unbearable. From the bloody ritual of decimation to exile, slavery, and execution, desertion was the one crime Rome could not forgive. In the end, though, no punishment could save the empire forever. When loyalty eroded and fear was no longer enough, even the world's most disciplined army dissolved. The empty shields multiplied, the lines broke, and Rome fell.